Good evening. I'm Eve Powell, filling in for Hady Raphael this evening. On tonight's episode of The Ball is Round, we have a very dramatic start to Montreal's journey in the Leagues Cup, followed by a visit from Mason Toye. And finally, we break down the women's national team starting at the Women's World Cup with a 0-0 draw to Nigeria. All that and a lot more on episode 141 of The Ball is Round. And I am thrilled to be joined by Elias once again. How are you?
Doing well. I'm doing well. Happy to be back once again.
Glad to have you. Unfortunately, Hady can't join us this evening, but I think he's very sad to be missing this episode because we have no shortage of dramatic topics to review this week. So hopefully we will do it justice even without him.
Absolutely. I have no doubt.
For sure. Obviously, before we jump into it, just to kind of get the elephant in the room out of the way, a certain player you admire very much made their debut on this side of the pond. Did you happen to catch that game on Friday night?
Unfortunately, I did not. I had to watch it later. It was a great game though, and I didn't get to watch it live because I was busy. But
all good.
But yeah, I mean, I really did enjoy the game as a whole. I did love how they were dangerous from the beginning, right? So
for sure.
It was nice to see some representation from that aspect at least, because again, the club hasn't been too represented at the World Cup in general, but it was overall it was a really good game to watch, and it was nice to see it.
Yeah, I agree.
Not cheer, but it was kind of like, oh wow, okay. Look at you go.
I appreciate
a little bit of excitement. A little bit of excitement. Maybe not.
Maybe you heard
cheering.
Me in your head going. I got you. I hope I was in the back of your head going, "We're a Montreal podcast."
Exactly.
I hope. Anyway, let's turn our attention to, of course, the team of the hour, which would be Montreal. And they started the Leagues Cup last night. And I kind of feel like we need to start this segment with me going, I said I hated this tournament. I thought it was dumb. I thought it was just a glorified preseason friendly for the Liga MX teams. But we had enough drama and enough excitement that I almost feel like I really need to eat my words because they did not show up to play a preseason friendly.
They came here and they really put their. I mean, a lot of the games, right? Not just the Montreal, the game we just referenced, right? Between Miami and Cruz Azul, the 19-round shootout. But yes, this Montreal game was exceptional, right? This was
totally.
This is one of the most dynamic crowds I've ever seen at Stade Saputo, and we'll get into that later. But it was such an atmosphere. Like again, I settled into the press box about 40 minutes before the game, and it was loud. Right, we were in the press area before where we couldn't really hear much of the crowd, but the second we sat in the press box, even with the double pane glass that's does a decent job at stopping a lot of the sound, you could hear it and you could feel it in your chest. It was an incredible atmosphere. It was a moment, that's for sure. It was definitely a moment.
That's awesome. Yeah, definitely. I'm not going to lie. I wasn't feeling 100% last night. So unfortunately, I couldn't make it. And I am kind of kicking myself in the butt today because definitely a little bit disappointing. And our friend Tate here agrees with you. Amazing rocking feeling at Stade Saputo. Definitely going to be really interesting to see the kind of turnout that we get for the upcoming match. It's a midweek match versus DC for the second match of this round. So it's going to be really interesting to see how much that motivated folks to come back because, midweek can be a little bit more of a commitment and a bit trickier for folks who work all week and stuff. So, really, really curious, really looking forward. And I am hoping to make it to the midweek match to see my favorite coach, Wayne Rooney.
I do really think that it was better that Montreal played Pumas on the Saturday because I
for
think if it was a
sure.
midweek game, it would have been like 70-30 Pumas fans. It would have been really bad. Like I can honestly say it was pretty neck and neck. It was pretty 50-50, the crowd. But if it was a midweek game, it would have been an away game. Montreal, it would have been crazy.
Yeah, I have a
even though like I feel like away fans do bring the best out of Montreal supporters and Montreal Ultras especially.
Totally.
They definitely like step their game up. But this was like if they were to play on Wednesday, it'd be a whole different level of
I agree. I overall agree because obviously, for regular attendees, I guess, at the stadium, it's less of a must do. Whereas if it's the one time you're gonna go, then I agree with you overall. We will definitely talk more about the ambiance in the stadium later on, but let's start off by taking a look at the lineup presented to us by Hernan Lozada last night. So we have starting in net Jonathan Zeroy as right wing back, Zachary Braillard. Then our trio of center backs, we have Joel Waterman, Rudy Camacho, Gabriela Corbo, and Ariel Lassiter repping on the left wing back position. Had a double pivot of Nathan Saliba and Mathieu Choignard, with Bryce Duke playing the number 10 role, and a tandem of Mahala Opoku and Chinonso Ofor up top. What did you make of this lineup? Any surprises to you? Any question marks there in that one? Go for it.
I mean, the biggest surprise was not seeing Mathieu Choignard on the starting 11 or on the bench at all, right? He did just come back from a really long stint with an adductor injury, and everyone was kind of like, what happened? He might be under the weather. It's not confirmed by the club or anything like that. And hope we'll find out more about it sooner rather than later. And the second one, again, in the midfield, was Victor Wanyama's second consecutive exclusion from the starting 11. Did I not say Piet?
No, you said Mathieu Choignard.
Who did I say? Oh, no, sorry about that.
I was sitting there, I was like, who was there?
Just because Choignard's face was the one on the graphic.
I got you. You got Choignard on the brain, and I got you. Okay.
But yeah, Samuel Piet's exclusion, right, and not Mathieu Choignard, obviously. And again, Victor Wanyama as well, whose second consecutive game, fully healthy, or at least mostly healthy, not in the starting 11. And while we were in the press box at the end of the game, we saw him leave the stadium, as the players do. They leave and they go to their cars and they go home, but he was limping heavily. Now Victor Wanyama does have a certain noticeable gait to his walk, and he does have a little bit of a hobbling when he walks, even when he's not hurting, but this looked really labored. So hopefully there's nothing too wrong with him. But yeah, so that did cause that caused a few raised eyebrows, for myself included. But other than that, I think that you're kind of going with the hot hand. You're kind of going with players that are in form. You're showing that the debate at right back is a bit more contested than some might think. Picking Zachary Braillard over Aaron Herrera, and other than that, though, it was pretty standard. And I think that Hernan Lozada's kind of settling into his, at least most of his positions are set for the best 11.
There was a small part of me that wondered if we might see a change up at the goalkeeper position, because it's changing of a competition. James Pantemis is obviously fit and healthy. He's been on the bench now for quite some time. However, given that did not happen, leads me to believe that basically Jonathan Zeroy is the number one, and it would take either a terrible run of form or an injury, really, for him to return to the bench. Do you agree?
Yeah, it's pretty set in stone that he will be the guy, at least for the foreseeable future. He was very cut and dry about it when asked in the press conference before the game about whether or not he would be playing Jonathan Zeroy, if he would switch up. He goes, no, Jonathan's our guy, and it shows that based on the 11 they picked, that they're not going to be looking to rotate the squad too much in a tournament like this. They're going to put their best foot forward every single time, which is it's what you expect from a team that is. Which will get any opportunity to win any kind of silverware or have any kind of advancement, especially if they're not necessarily front runners for Supporter Shield or MLS Cup right now. So you look elsewhere.
Yeah, for sure. I agree overall. So yeah, let's take a look at the actual events of the match.
Yes. There were a lot.
So it was really a tale of two halves for, I think, the CF Montreal side. But let's start with the first half, which I think we can all agree is the more pleasant half to discuss. So overall, Montreal did have a lot of control of the ball in the first half. I think maybe Pumas were finding their feet a little bit, or perhaps Montreal was truly asserting themselves. But they did come out very much on the front foot with a lot of possession, a lot of time spent in the opposition half of the field. And, you know, they were definitely working hard to create chances. And it did feel as though the defense, at least from my perspective, the defense of Pumas was kind of there for the taking. It felt like their center backs were not very organized with each other. And, you know, unfortunately, it took a little while, but Montreal was eventually able to profit from that. Let's talk about kind of the first most notable chance of the match. And that came in about the 16th minute when Chinenza Ofor received the ball from Mahalo Opoku. Unfortunately, his shot wound up missing the target. What did you make of this chance? Did you have any concerns, as we've talked about Ofor's kind of limitations tactically?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like this was one of those games that really highlighted what Ofor does really well and what he doesn't do so well. You know, he held the ball really well for his entire stint. He got in behind. He used his considerable pace to get into really good spots. But again, when it came to playing that final ball or maybe being a bit more clinical in front of goal, there's still some work to be done. And this is one of those moments, and this is one of those performances that kind of highlighted what he does again very well and what needs considerable work. And I find the entire build up to that play was really nice because it kind of showcased how well Montreal was doing in that first half. But on 04's side, you know, it was very revealing about what his limitations were, like you said.
Yeah, he did manage to carry the ball a few times. And I think overall, when he was passing to a teammate, whether it was for this chance for Opoku or whether it was, there were a couple of other chances in the game. I don't know if we're going to talk about them in detail, but there's one that I can think of when he kind of linked up with Opoku again, but it was much closer to the goal mouth. And it did feel like he was trying to play more simply. You know, he was just looking for somebody nearby to whom he could kind of almost a safe pass, but it was still kind of a progressive or pass or something that could generate a chance. So it felt like he wasn't overcomplicating his game, which I think at this stage in his development, or at least at this stage, kind of as he adjusts and as he hopefully develops into a more kind of refined player technically. For me, honestly, I think that's the best bet for him. Like, I think that's the safest choice.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah, no, very much so. So anyway, let's talk about one of probably our favorite moments of the first half, and that came in the 23rd minute. In the 23rd minute, we had an excellent run from Bryce Duke. He received the ball kind of right about in the middle of the pitch, really, and carried it to nearly the top of the 18-yard box. He was fouled, but as he was fouled, he was able to lay the ball off to Mathieu Choignard. The ref opted to play advantage in this situation, and Mathieu Choignard laid the ball off to Lassiter just outside, kind of on the left-hand side of the 18-yard box, and Bryce Duke recovered and stood up and found himself open and available. Lassiter passed the ball, and from almost the exact same spot as where he had been fouled, just a little bit more centrally, Bryce Duke took a very, very simple shot, like not trying to do anything too spectacular, but sure enough, it beat the goalkeeper, and Montreal opened the scoring 1-0. What do you have to say about that? I have lots to say, but I'll let you go first.
Yeah. I mean, this first half especially kind of showed us the best we can expect from Bryce Duke this season, right? Given that he's still 22 years old, right? And ask him to perform at a level like that consistently is a big ask for someone that young. But this kind of shows what his ceiling is. And he had such a good first half where he picked up the ball, he was confident, he was running at defenses, he was linking up with teammates, and he was shooting. And he's someone who's scored from outside the box before. And you know, it's whenever you put the ball low and into the side netting, it's never an easy save for the goalkeeper. And you know, sometimes if it's so well placed that it beats the goalie completely. And it was a perfectly placed shot, right? So this is another game that kind of, it's good to see him kind of grow in confidence. And this is one of those games where, he's just, a player's just feeling it, and you could tell the second, every time he got the ball, he was looking to do something. And that is the version of Bryce Duke that can really become not just a significant piece, but almost a game breaker for Montreal, and something that is definitely worth the $2.2 million in GAM and Kamal Miller to obtain.
For sure. And I do kind of feel bad for him because, part of this goal originated from him getting fouled. And it was a pretty bold choice of the ref overall to play an advantage in that situation, given that it would have been a really interesting spot for a free kick. More on free kicks to come in just a minute. But, he was really in the wars last night. I feel like the Pumas players kind of had a target on his back somewhat, and we'll talk about some of the fouls later on, particularly in the second half for sure. But he definitely, I think he definitely earned earned his pay last night. I felt really bad for him watching the game as it went on because he was just kind of getting beat to pieces, honestly. But I completely agree with you. It felt like he showed up and he was completely ready to go. It was, for me, that was probably the best Bryce Duke that we've seen in quite a while, even better than some of his other matches where he scored goals. This was one of the best matches, if not the best match that we've seen from him, particularly that first half.
Yeah, so good.
Yeah, no, it was. I liked his confidence. I felt like he was linking up very well with his fellow midfielders. I think he is developing some chemistry with Mathieu Choinière, who is obviously an indisputable starter by now. And so to have the two of them able to link up, because we have seen him connect with Lassiter, connect with Herrera on occasions. So to have somebody else with whom they are, with whom he can get together is, I think, really great thing. And thanks to Robbie for, mentioning that Bryce Duke takes a beating every game. That is true. I think it just stuck out more last night. But obviously last night's match was really fiery, and we'll talk about some of those moments. But I think it just stuck out a little bit more to me last night than overall, or than other nights. So anyway, a really interesting goal for Montreal. Really appreciated it. Anyway, unfortunately, there kind of weren't a lot of other interesting shots or interesting, I would say, attacking moments. So before we come up to our second goal of the match, is there anything else that you wanted to say kind of on that span of time in the first half between the first and second goals?
I mean, I was more surprised that, whenever you play on the road, you try and disrupt whatever a team's trying to do, and a lot of teams have found success in Montreal by sitting back in a low block and kind of giving Montreal the ball without letting them have too much space, but they could have the ball for as long as they want. Yeah. And because Montreal kind of starts to run out of solutions and maybe hits the panic button. And Pumas did the exact opposite. They tried to open this game as much as possible, like from the get-go. And you could tell that played right into Montreal's strength. I think Montreal maybe went into this game wanting to keep the ball a lot more and maybe dictate play, and then they realized that Pumas was just playing so open that they were like, I'm finding gaps everywhere, because not just Bryce Duke was finding the ball with space and running at defenses, but Mathieu Choinière did it a few times. Both fullbacks had acres of room, and they really did run riot for a good portion of that first half. And it was very surprising to see that was the approach Pumas had, given that there's so many games that Montreal do well in with that kind of style and openness. But then they've seen games where Montreal struggled and been completely outplayed when it's a low block and there's just no access. So it was a very interesting approach to this game. I think maybe Pumas underestimated just how good Montreal are at picking teams apart when they're open and vulnerable. Because that's exactly what happened in this game.
Yeah, I very much agree. And a part of it makes me wonder if, because this is kind of undoubtedly part of their preseason preparation, even though it does have a lot of competitive implications for any team who's able to make it to the further stages of this tournament. Part of me can't help but wonder is, if that was perhaps a deliberate choice by the coach, However, we're going to talk about the changes that we saw in the second half from both sides, because we saw a very different second half of this match. But definitely agree with you overall that, it really catered to exactly what Montreal wanted to do. Like, I don't think Hernan Lozada could have asked for a better opponent's tactic anyway. So late on in the second half, and my feelings about this. By now, I hope you know my feelings. There is no better time to score a goal, in my humble opinion, than right before halftime, because the opposition coach has to rip up his halftime speech, and it's a huge shot in the arm to the scoring team, and it's obviously super demoralizing for the team that was this close to making it to halftime with just a 1-goal deficit. So Montreal earned a free kick. I would say it was about perhaps the 30 yards out, give or take 25 to 30 yards out.
Take,
yeah. I'm not great at physics or math, so don't judge me. Anyway, and it was just a little bit to the left of center of the 18-yard box, and Mathieu Choinière stepped up to take it. I think there was a really interesting setup here by Montreal on this free kick. I kind of almost wish I had saved a screenshot, because we had not a whole ton of Montreal players in the 18-yard box, but we did have Gabriela Corbo kind of placed closest to the Pumas goalkeeper. And he was definitely clearly in an offside position before the ball was struck. However, of course, he tightened his run as the Pumas players also dropped backwards, therefore not involved. Nonetheless, though, I think Mathieu Choinière struck the free kick, and it was a very simple free kick. It wasn't anything too overall spectacular. It wasn't anything going for, the top bins or off the crossbar and in or anything like that. But nonetheless, I think first Gabriela Corbo celebrated, and then, of course, we found out later on that the successful goal from Mathieu Choinière was indeed not actually touched by Gabriela Corbo, and was actually a free kick scored by Montreal, a very rare treat for those of us who have followed the team for a long time, because we are not accustomed to Montreal scoring a whole ton of free kicks. I found this setup on this free kick really interesting, tactically from Montreal, with, Gabriela Corbo kind of hanging back as almost like a decoy on the goalkeeper. What did you make of it?
I honestly, it made me think about the first goal against Charlotte, where it's just kind of like you put the ball in dangerous places and good things will happen.
That is very
and
true.
Again, you're right. It was a ball that managed to beat the first man, which is something that Montreal has struggled to do, and not have their cross or their corner or their any kind of free kick immediately rejected. And then it was perfectly arced into a really dangerous spot. And I think even if Gabriela Corbo did get ahead on that, he was going to direct it into the net. So I think it was kind of a damned if you do, damned if you don't situation for the keeper. And he kind of got caught between, do I follow the ball? Do I prepare myself to
anticipate the header?
Right. So, and again, as a goalie, you see a guy getting ready for a header, you assume, okay, he's going to head the ball. You don't expect him to miss a wide open header. So I mean, Corbo did kind of whiff on that, and if I had missed the net, I'm sure he would have felt real bad. But right, they don't ask how, they ask how many, and then it's in the back of the net, and I'm sure. I mean, he probably thinks that he hit it because he did celebrate like he scored. So again, you put the ball into those spots that ask questions of the defense, and good things will undoubtedly happen. And I mean, at the same time, Pumas made a mess of this. Because even if it wasn't him, I think it was Rudy Camacho that was right next to him that was also completely unmarked. So even if Choinière's corner free kick was going a bit wide, Rudy Camacho was right behind him, completely unmarked as well. So it was really a mess or an elapse of coverage from Pumas that led to this Corbo being wide open. And also just the fact that they couldn't clear the ball, even if Corbo had missed it, there should be someone there to clear the ball, and it wasn't. So look, you take goals like that every day of the week. If it's a goal that maybe didn't go as planned, and happens against them so many times. Exactly, they've been on the receiving end of so many of these wonky goals that whenever they score, when it feels almost like karma. So
there you go. No, fair enough.
I'm sure they'll take it.
Yeah, exactly. They were definitely due for it. So obviously, with that being said, this goal came in the 43rd minute, so there really was not much time left before the second half started. But there was time for the first of several scuffles between the players during the night. Maybe we'll just talk about it now really quickly to kind of get it out of the way. It was a really, really feisty match. The tackles were hard and crunching for sure. And there were several kind of coming together of large groups of players. Don Garber would have been in there, and the disciplinary committee with the mass confrontation warnings for sure. I kind of feel bad for the ref because it was, I'm sure, a really tricky match to referee. I have kind of my opinions on how some of it was handled, but it was, I think, a really, really spicy affair, and definitely for somebody who's not used to going to Stade Saputo on a regular basis. I'm sure it contributed to the exciting atmosphere because we don't really see that a whole ton in MLS competition.
No. I do think that Montreal is kind of developing this reputation as a team that really doesn't take anything lying down. Like, if you want to play physical, they are more than happy to play physical back. And they are more than happy to kind of get in your face and maybe not take anything lightly. So I think that in addition to the fact that there were so many Pumas fans there that were so loud, it definitely fired up, the team. And then on top of that, they're down 2-0 in the first half, so there's an element of frustration that's also leading. Like, it felt like a perfect storm of antagonistic behavior on both sides, right? I think that, given that they were down 2-0, Pumas, maybe, you go into a challenge a bit harder, you're a bit frustrated, nothing's going your way, especially from a defender's perspective, where it's a nightmare first half. So I'm gonna put my shoulder into somebody. I'm gonna, maybe, even if the tackle's a little bit late, I'm gonna put my foot in. And that's part of soccer. And you heard at the end of the game, almost all the people that were almost all the Montreal players are asked about were like, I love this, right? They feed off of this kind of energy, and it felt, and Onosada said it felt like a proper cup tie. It felt like a proper cup game, which is something we weren't too sure would happen in this, again, glorified friendlies tournament. But hey, if there was any question about whether or not teams were invested in this, we have our answer.
For sure. So any changes that you would have made from Hernan Lozada's perspective at halftime? Personally, I'm like, I don't touch that winning formula, but you go for it.
Yeah, I mean, I understand that last Laplana came on for Eric Lasser, who did have a knock to his hamstring, which is why he only played the first half. He was, doing mostly solo training during the week in the build up to this game. So that was more a preventative issue. But again, it was, other than that, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. You stick with that. You stick with the energy. You stick with that kind of momentum. I was surprised that he was the only one to sub out.
Yeah, wholeheartedly agree with you there. And definitely, especially given the physical nature of the match, probably overall a wise preventative measure taken.
So,
I really don't have it on here, but we do have a question. So I'm just going to bring up the question, given it's kind of topical at the moment. We have a question from Dr. Foot. So our opinion on Lassi Lappalainen, who made his kind of long-awaited return to Montreal last night. What did you make of it? I'll let you go first, and then I will give my 2 cents.
There were some good moments, but I really don't think that wingback is the position for him, right? And I think we were kind of not became complacent, but we kind of accepted him as the de facto left wingback this season before the arrival of Ariel Lassiter. And then we see the way that Ariel Lassiter plays as a natural left-footed winger, someone who seemed instantly more comfortable despite having not really played that position, who seemed instantly more comfortable and more just at one with the responsibilities of this position. And it was night and day, right? Because Lassie honestly stuck out like a sore thumb. And it's no surprise that his best performance came in the first half against Philadelphia, where he was actually on his preferred side, before the string of injuries. And he does really look like a fish out of water in some scenarios. And with the ball, he's still good, right? He's a forward, he's a winner, he's good with the ball, and he's quick. But the entire job of wingback asked for so much more, and Ariel Lassiter has shown a lot of improvement in that regard, and that's why it looked so much more obvious that he wasn't on the field, because Lassie was caught out of position a number of times, and they didn't end up paying for it on that front.
Yeah.
But it still every single time almost it looked like he was just not in the right spot, and you can't help but wonder that if Losada sticks with this formation, what future does Lassiter have with the club? Because I don't think that it's one at wingback.
Yeah, I kind of have to agree with you. You know, it's been hit and miss. He's had games at wingback that we have really, really liked. But especially kind of when you see another player fill that role for a little while, and you get accustomed to, kind of like you said, it's, you know, we got accustomed to seeing Lassie Lapline in there and kind of accepting that, or his performance in that role that he's kind of been shoehorned into. But overall, when you kind of get to step back from it by seeing another player like regularly, consistently in that role, you kind of realize how unnatural it does end up looking for him. And, you know, I feel bad for him because he's doing what's asked of him, by his coach. But, you know, if it's kind of sticking out like a sore thumb, you have to ask yourself if it is, like you said, his true future at the club. Because if that's really the only role they can find for him, you know, we got to ask, is that the best use of the TAM money, right? I feel harsh saying that, but I mean, it's been a hot minute since he's been tried out at a different role. We did see him briefly at right wing back, which, like you said, was better, but also Montreal has a lot more depth at that position. So I struggle to imagine him, you know, dislodging both Aaron Herrera and Zachary Brockyard. So yeah, but any other attacking position, unfortunately, we just haven't had a chance really to see him there, to see if maybe that's a better fit for him. And, you know, I do feel like he was a little bit more natural looking in this role under Wilfred Nancy. Under the way
it was different, yeah.
It was different. Like, definitely I think the ask of him was a little bit different. And obviously Montreal did have a lot more possession during that time as well. So I think the defensive demands on him were also a little bit less. And undoubtedly, I'm sure that helped. Mm-hmm. However, this year things are a little different. And it's kind of throwing us back to some of the moments where we were like, oh boy. So yeah, hope that answers your question, Dr. Foot. So yes, the second half of this match kicked off. You know, I really don't have a whole ton to say because the hot topics come at the very end of the half. Definitely, though, we saw Montreal absolutely kind of take their foot off the gas for this one a little bit. Felt very much that you know, Pumas was kind of given a lot of luxury to roam with the ball. I wouldn't say that Pumas did a whole ton with it because they didn't actually put a shot on target until the 88th minute, which we are coming to imminently. But that being said, I did feel like Montreal was very much playing to preserve their lead versus continuing to go forward and look to really, really, you know, just absolutely put the nail in the coffin on this team. What did you make of their second half performance?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right. You know, there were a couple moments where they could have really put their foot down and tried to kill this game, and they decided to err on the side of caution instead, which is something that they've actively tried to fix, you know, throughout the season, and they've done a decent job at killing games, if not killing games, at least seeing them out. And that's why this was so surprising, because it did really feel like the odd one out in terms of blowing a lead, but when it comes to the opportunities you have on the counterattack while defending a lead, you have to be more clinical and you have to make teams pay. You know, some of them, like the Mason Toye getting around the keeper with a wide open net that got blocked, that got cleared off the line, comes to mind. You know, these passes that are just an inch too far. There's some really, really good defensive play that then turns into offense that just isn't converted properly, and it is worrisome. But at the same time, given how rare this has happened, I don't think you have to start ringing alarm bells that, you know, they're going to start blowing leads left, right, and center. But at the same time, this did almost completely ruin their Leagues Cup in the span of 3 minutes. So
exactly. Worth keeping an eye on, but we'll see.
Exactly.
Exactly. So Montreal, aside from Lassie Lapalainen, Montreal made their next 2 subs in the 68th minute with Mason Toye and Aaron Herrera replacing Chinonso Ofor and Zachary Broguillard. For me, overall, like I said, for Chinonso Ofor, we saw kind of some of his highs and his lows, I think, in this match. But like from a combination perspective, I think he is learning to combine well with Opoku. And that for me is good. We did see some interplay between them on multiple occasions that was relatively successful. It resulted maybe in a shot or usually a shot off target, but nonetheless, if they're able to find each other, for me, that's really critical, because that was something that we had asked about a couple of episodes ago, is who is Opoku's best partner. And I think we were pretty much Team 04 for this one, and it's looking a little bit promising.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely some kind of understanding there that's at least starting to form.
For sure.
They obviously complement each other well, right? They don't really step on each other's toes too much in terms of profile or what kind of territory they occupy on the field. So once you get that kind of healthy balance between your 2 forwards and your 2 strikers, you have to run with that, especially if they're getting along well on the field.
Wholeheartedly agree. We didn't talk about him a whole lot, but do you have anything else to say about Zachary Broguillard?
No, I mean, he put in a really good shift. He didn't really do as much offensively as he normally does. He really does love to get involved on when the team gets forward. He does love to be really almost at the level of the penalty area. When Montreal gets forward, and today he was a bit more reserved because of the fact that the Pumas do have some really dangerous wingers, and Joel Waterman had his hands full the entire evening with Huerta who played as left wing on that side.
Yes.
So I think he did do a very good job at keeping him at bay and giving Waterman a hand. Yes. And I think that does kind of take away from what Zachary Broguillard does best.
Yeah.
But at the same time, right, as a defender, a mistake-free game is nothing to write home about. It's a good shift.
Take it any day of the week. And I think, speaking of Cesar Huerta, he was definitely, I think, perhaps the main thorn in Montreal's side, most notably in that second half. He was everywhere. I mean, he was involved in everything good that happened for Pumas, and unfortunately, a lot of bad that happened to Montreal. Notably, in the 76th minute, he earned a yellow card for a tackle on Bryce Duke, which was a really, really hard tackle. Unfortunately, we saw the next round of substitutions directly after that tackle, with Bryce Duke leaving. He seemed a little bit uncomfortable, although he did remain on the bench. And Opoku also was subbed off at that time. They were replaced by Victor Wanyama, who you mentioned does not seem to be at 100%, and Ahmed Hamdi. So for me, this is pretty much a very resolutely defensive decision from Hernan Lozada. This is very much shutting up shop, and let's contain our 2-0, the most dangerous lead of them all, and get out of here safe. Because obviously now both starting strikers have been removed. We only have one true striker out on the field, and it's definitely going to be a little bit of a calamity. And if you're a Montreal fan, you're probably getting ready to start biting nails.
Yeah, it was definitely I think Lozada can kind of tell that the winds were changing a bit, so he made a lot of substitutions in a short amount of time. And unfortunately, I don't think that they all had the desired effect. I think that Mason Toye and Aaron Herrera did do a pretty good job, but when you look at Wanyama, Hamdi, and Lapalainen and what you expect from them, I do feel like they left us a bit wanting with that performance. It did seem like there was a significant drop in energy. And again, with all due respect to Victor Wanyama, he does not bring the same level of energy as someone like Chouanier or Saliba or Piet. That's just not the style of play, right? So I was hoping to see him maybe organize a bit more instead of just being a workhorse. But it was
I kind of wondered as well, because things were obviously getting really frantic out there for Montreal, if he could serve as kind of like a calming presence, because he is captain of the team, typically when Sam Piet is absent, although Rudy Camacho did wear the armband last night. And I kind of wondered if he could potentially serve to kind of help, just kind of keep everybody level-headed, keep them with their eyes on the prize, sort of. And unfortunately, it didn't seem. And I'm sure having such a raucous stadium last night maybe didn't help with communication on the field. But unfortunately, it kind of didn't have the effect that I was hoping that he would have, because he's generally so composed as a player that for me, like, he does just exude a serenity when he's out there on the pitch. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, it was not contagious. But
not last night, at least.
No, exactly. Speaking, though, of Hady and Mason Toye, in the 80th minute, we probably saw Montreal's best chance of the second half to truly seal this and, really offer no way back to Pumas. So in the 81st minute, as a matter of fact, Hady received the ball in Montreal's half and laid it off to Choinière, who controlled the ball really well to carry it forward into the opposing half. He played an excellent pass to Mason Toye, who managed to remain onside and found himself one-on-one with the goalkeeper. However, Mathieu Choinière's pass, although it was definitely a progressive pass, it was earing to the side of the 18-yard box. So by the time Toye was able to control the ball and round the keeper, he was well to the side at a very difficult angle, for sure, of the 18-yard box. A Romel Kyoto type angle, for sure. He did get a shot off, and it looked definitely like it was goal-bound. However, an onrushing Pumas defender rushed back just at the very nick of time to put it behind the goal for a corner kick, which unfortunately resulted kind of in nothing. Did you feel like this was maybe like a turning point in the sense of like, how worried were you when this didn't go in? Montreal still had 2 goals, but obviously Pumas were like launching the kitchen sink at them.
Yeah, I feel like Pumas may have felt like they had a stay of execution by clearing that, so that may have kind of reinvigorated them, especially when you save a surefire goal, and you're kind of reminded like, okay, we have another chance now to make a comeback. Let's not waste it. Then it's always gonna contribute to the momentum, and the Pumas crowd that definitely loved that goal line save and made their feelings known is going to help. But overall, that's not what worried me. It's kind of just like they had a chance to kill this game and didn't. But again, nothing could have prepared anybody for how those last 5-10 minutes were going to play out.
Totally. So I've kind of been putting it off. So let's pull off that Band-Aid and talk about those last few minutes of that match. So as I mentioned a few minutes earlier, Pumas didn't actually put a shot on target until the 88th minute. And lo and behold, they put their first shot on target. And what a strike it was. So, Pumas, it kind of originated from a throw-in. None other than Cesar Huerta controlled the ball at the top of the 18-yard box, laid it off to a counterpart who crossed it in, and a very well struck, I'll say it, a very well struck hit by Fernandez to, sure enough, bring Pumas back within 1 goal. So that was the 88th minute. How did you feel? I know how I felt.
It's like that psychology now that you concede one and all you do is you look at the clock. You just look at the clock every 5 seconds and you're like, why is it going so slow?
Oh, I know.
And I think that's kind of what Montreal did on the field, where they're kind of like, okay, can we please get the hell out of here now, please? This is close enough, and I think they look, the dam was going to break with how much possession and how much territory they were allowing Pumas. I don't think they fought back nearly enough. I don't think they pressed the ball nearly enough, because again, I understand that you're trying to protect the lead, but that's not done by sitting back and hoping for the best. So they were kind of asking for it, and look, you play games like that and you win these prizes, and they had it coming. And the thing is, now these are where your substitutes and your leaders on the field are supposed to reinvigorate and re-energize.
Exactly.
But the thing is, now you have the entire Pumas crowd that's so spread out. Again, a lot of it was in the away supporter section, but they were spread out pretty much throughout the stadium. And they went crazy, right? I mean, you pulled within 1, you still have 5 minutes if you include added time. So yeah, they got back into the game, and they were essentially taken out of the game. Montreal had managed to avoid any shots on target. The Pumas delegation was relatively quaint compared to the rest of the game, and all they did then was give the players a lifeline and give the fans the hope again, and they were louder than ever. So
totally, yeah.
All this was Montreal's doing.
It was just you could just see kind of what was coming, what was brewing, if you will.
It was definitely
kind of like Robbie says, the impact teams of yesteryear. If you did not have that thought cross your mind, then
this was
you probably haven't been following
vintage
for that long.
2019.
Oh God, 2019, that was a bad year. No, overall, really, I was like, this is not bode well. I was like, there's 88 minutes, and I honestly thought that there was going to be more added time than there was, like more injury time.
Montreal kind of got let off the hook with that.
A little bit, actually a lot bit. Definitely, I really, really, really thought there was going to be way more injury time. But nonetheless, only 4 minutes were added. However, that was all Pumas needed.
Yeah.
So in the 91st minute, once again, Cesar Huerta was at the heart of the action. He played a shot that Jonathan Serrois did save and rebounded. The rebound fell to a Pumas player. It was headed off the line. However, it rebounded once again to Emmanuel Montejano. And sure enough, 2 saves in such short succession. Third time was going to be the charm, and Pumas had leveled it in the 91st minute. Catastrophe. I mean, breaking down that goal, I just, it felt like the Montreal players were very much running out of steam. It looked like it, like you said, kind of the Pumas players appeared to have been really reinvigorated, particularly after that first goal. But I mean, from a Montreal perspective, you had the defenders just kind of looked like they were all over the shop. Unfortunately, there were 2 kind of relatively open Pumas attackers ready to receive the rebound from Jonathan Serrois' shot, or save, as it were. And lo and behold, obviously, you can only cling on clearing things off the line for so long before you end up paying for it. So sure enough, it was 2-2. Anything to add on that one?
No, I mean, look, again, it was borderline self-inflicted, and I genuinely thought that they were going to lose in regulation at that point. I thought that
you thought there was more to come.
I felt like it's just one of those. Maybe I'm hanging out with you too much, but just that pessimism that began to set in.
Welcome
and
to the dark
side. It's one of those funky feelings you get when you watch, especially Impact / CF Montreal team that just will lead you like, oh God, I know what's coming next. And it didn't, but there was that pit in your stomach that just sits there and grows, and it was not a fun last 2 minutes of added time. It was not fun.
It was not. I agree with you completely. However, Montreal did make it to the end of the match at a 2-2 draw, and as are the rules in this competition, that means that it was straight to penalties. So looked like Pumas won the coin toss. They were shooting first. So the first shot, I'm not going to go over each penalty one by one. Of course, we do know that the penalties went with CF Montreal scoring all 4 of their penalties. For Pumas, the first penalty was completely missed, sent into row Z, and the 4th penalty taken by Pumas was actually saved by Jonathan Serrois. Montreal's 4 kickers. Kickers is not the word.
Penalty takers.
I'm calling it. I launched off with kickers, so here we go.
Kickers.
Where Rudy Camacho, Macho Chouanière, Gabriela Corbo, and Lassi Lapalainen. So I was really surprised to see kind of both Camacho and Corbo stepping up, as well as Chouanière, because we haven't really seen him take penalties in the past. Camacho, we've seen him take penalties certainly in the Canadian Championship, notably the Canadian Championship final in 2019. And I think Lassi Lapalainen also took a penalty then. But particularly for Chouanière and Corbo, I was surprised to see them step up. But obviously, they were ready.
I wasn't surprised, though.
No?
Center back penalties don't miss.
Okay.
Center back penalties are as good a bet as anything in soccer. So I saw Corbo step up.
You're like, oh, chill.
It's as good as in, and Steven Vittoria's second penalty doesn't count. But
I was waiting for me to get a word in. I was like,
but it's because it's the first penalty that counted.
And the second okay. Okay.
Well, but center back penalties as a concept are about as rock solid as anything in soccer. So
fair enough.
All the faith in the world in when they stepped up.
Right on.
And they were also just exemplary penalties. You know, all four of them were tucked into the corner, very well placed. We're gonna get into penalties later with the Canadian women's team. But we're as far as Montreal's were, they were as good as you could have hoped from them. So well done.
I agree. So with that being said, it was a win for Montreal on penalty kicks. The way the League Cups work means that Montreal takes 2 points. They would have had 3 had they won in regulation, alas. And Pumas takes 2 from this. So with a result against DC, Montreal should be safely through to the next round. Fingers crossed. So Montreal should have a very, very good idea of their fate by the end of Wednesday evening. Anything else to add on this match before we turn our attention to our next kind of 2 topics?
No, I mean, look, a win is a win, right? They
win is a win.
They're not gonna be happy losing that 1 point, but a win is a win.
Exactly. It was definitely like that. Definitely dramatic. Definitely quite the atmosphere. Definitely just wild for one of. I have no other word for it. It was just a wild
classic Leagues Cup game. What we've come to expect from the tournament.
There you go. yeah. You unfortunately know that's the bar that they've set for us, so watch out.
The first 2 days have been really good. So
yeah, exactly.
Look, if they keep delivering bangers like this, then I will soften my stance on the tournament.
Likewise.
And maybe I will begrudgingly admit that it was fun.
Likewise. Yeah. Okay. I feel you. We may be eating some humble pie by the end of the month.
If we get bangers like that, then I will eat it. And then
fair enough. So before we move on to our next topic, which is going to be Mason Toye's interview, we do have quite a few questions here. So we've got as well a few questions on the Women's World Cup, but we're going to save that. But let's take a look at our CF Montreal questions. So we have a question from Tate, and he asks, which was the best first half home performance of the year? Nashville, Minnesota, or Pumas?
I gotta go with this one, right? Minnesota was in shambles when they came here, and it kind of felt.
You kind of felt like it was almost more towards the opposition that it was discrediting them.
Exactly. Nashville didn't have Walker Zimmerman, which is a huge loss, and you could tell by the way they're playing right now during the Gold Cup with no Walker Zimmerman, just how much they need him. But Pumas was a full strength team that came in undefeated in the first 3 league games this season, and it was Montreal handled the pressure brilliantly and dominated the entire first half. So I have to go with Pumas.
Yeah, I'm inclined to agree. And we have kind of continued to deal with over time this general sentiment that Liga MX is superior to MLS, and I mean there's a lot of history to back that up. To be fair, however, I think just the pride that you can get from delivering such a complete first half against a side that we would typically on paper say is superior is always going to be extra satisfactory. So I agree with you overall.
Every time.
Yeah, totally. Let's move on to our next question then. From Maxime. Maxime asks, why is it always so special / fun in Montreal during special or unusual events? And he cites kind of CONCACAF, Leagues Cup, Canadian Championship. For me, I'll start if you don't mind. For me, it's kind of just the fact that it's out of the normal, I think
it's the novelty of it.
Yeah, Canadian Championship, like, you kind of don't necessarily get a massive crowd at that, but the crowd that you typically get is just so passionate that they really just turn up and they're really into it, and they tend to understand the implications of winning the Canadian Championship, that you're going to get into CONCACAF. obviously the other competitions, you know, you get to see teams that you're not used to seeing. You obviously get kind of a different level, I guess, of supporter attendance as well from the opposition. And that always, I think, just makes Montrealers really, really want to stand up and defend their home, you know, and let folks know this is our house. I mean, you can even kind of put the Toronto matches for me. Like, I feel like the ambiance is always different during those matches as well. So I feel like whenever something, you know, with a lot more plot line around it happens, it's totally normal and expected for me. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of agree with you, and Montreal's ultras do typically rise to the level of the away supporters, right? So that's what we saw, that Montreal, the not just the ultra section, but the entire crowd was so good last night because of the fact that they had arguably the stiffest test at Stade Saputo, at least, that they've ever had.
Yeah.
Because usually when they have Mexican or other CONCACAF opposition, it's at the Olympic Stadium, and it's a different conversation. But at Stade Saputo, you almost never get in a competitive match that kind of representation for the away side. So they really did bring the best out of them. It's the novelty of it, right? I love the Canadian Championship. More often than not, I prefer going to cover Canadian Championship over MLS games, just because it's Canadian soccer. So how could I not get hyped for it, right? Even if it's, you know, semi-pro clubs, even if it's you know, CPL teams, it's so fun and it's so great to see that, you know, they're waving the flag and it's delivering good matches with a great atmosphere. So even the Vaughan game, the Vaughan game was one of my favorite games to cover all season because of the fact that it was just such a unique Canadian experience, Canadian soccer experience, especially for CF Montreal. So it was awesome, and that's why, again, you know, I think a lot of fans feel the same way.
For sure. Next up, we have Amin, who asks, is it it's the first time, since joining Montreal in 2020 that Victor Wanyama has been benched 2 consecutive games while healthy. Well, healthy with a little asterisk by it. Do you expect him to leave before August 5th, especially with the rumor of New England being interested in him? Not sure that Lozada is a big fan of Wanyama. That's a face. You're not watching Elias' face if you're not watching this and you're listening midweek.
Fan is not. I don't think fan is the right word. I think that he's much less reliant on Wanyama than, for example, Wilfried Nancy is, just because of the style of play. Yeah. I think if you have Rudy Camacho and Victor Wanyama in a much more vertical and a much more direct style of play, not that they become redundant, but they do fulfill a lot of the same roles. In terms of that metronome reset button that the midfield and other players can look to. I do think Victor Wanyama is being asked to do a lot more than what he did under Wilfried Nancy and a lot of different things, which is why I think the fact that the emergence of, you know, Nathan Saliba, who's finally starting to settle in, the return of Samuel Pied, who is a workhorse by every sense of the word, and Mr. Schwanek, who's become an all-star, literally. Kind of maybe if Losada's looking to take advantage of an open and a very direct game, could mean that Wanyama is left by the wayside. Again, fitness is probably an issue, and I don't think that he's 100% fit, so I don't think quality or tactics alone are what motivated him sitting 2 consecutive games on the bench, but it has to be an indicator that, you know, he's not pushing Wanyama to play, that, you know, he's comfortable playing other midfielders that may not be as tested because it fits what he wants to get out of them more.
For sure. And I mean, let's face it, if you're getting results, but you don't have to, like, there's no designated player on the pitch, which we know is the most expensive player. We know Montreal has a certain mandate to operate, let's face it, on a shoestring budget. I mean, that's kind of, aside from for Victor Wanyama, that's kind of like a win-win, you know, for everyone involved. So yeah, it's definitely going to be really interesting to see how that plays out. Although we really haven't heard anything more about the New England rumors, so I kind of struggle to see that materializing.
If he does, no, he's out of a contract too at the end of the year, and I don't think that
That's
New
a good
England's going to
point.
go all in for half a season of Wanyama, and they may renew him should that happen. But I think that Montreal is going to keep him for the last bit of his of his contract. He could also say goodbye to the fans. I don't think he's going to be renewing. Just the way the tactical direction of the club. I would be surprised if he renewed again.
Yeah.
But I don't see too much making sense in him leaving for New England.
Right on.
Unless Montreal gets Carlos healed. But.
Yeah, I gotta say I take that. sorry, Victor Wanyama. I take that. All right, we do also have another question from Dr. Foot. What is Pantemis' future with Montreal? Man, okay, I've been saying it. This is not the first time I've said it on this podcast. It might not be the last. I think if he wants to have a successful career, I think he needs to change his scenery. Period.
I mean, we kind of talked about it a bit at the beginning of the pod, right? It's I mean, Jonathan Sirois' show right now, and like he was goalie of the year his first year at Valor, and then the second year was a bit of a struggle, where he wasn't as great. He took some time as a second string, and then came back, and then was better again, and that doesn't mean that's going to happen in Montreal. But again, he is still very young, and this still feels almost like too good to be true in that he just walks in and he's automatically one of the best goalies in MLS. That it feels too good to be true, and I think that's partially that classic Montreal cynicism, but it's also just he's young, and I think that he needs time to grow into this, and he may need to have some growing pains at some point. So I think James Pantemis, who is in the running for a national team spot, cannot just twiddle his thumbs and wait for that opportunity. And so I think that I kind of agree with you that a change of scenery might be in the cards for him.
Well, I feel bad for him because part of this I do feel is kind of the way Montreal kind of managed his career overall in his development. He didn't start going out onto loan until kind of later on in the game because he did get a couple of loans in CPL himself, but definitely really bad circumstances because he did go into this year obviously as the number one. Seeing him pick up an injury in the first game, like talk about having the worst luck, and then it was a relatively long-term injury, and then the stand-in second goalkeeper has it's so hard to justify removing him from his position that you really do feel bad for James Pantemis, but this is kind of a crucial time for him in his career. Like this is, for me, it's kind of make or break. Like you said, with the national team getting a look in, especially as we can kind of expect Milan Borjan to be on the way out. Well, we can reasonably expect that probably Dane Sinclair and Max Crépeau are going to take the 1 and 2 positions. There is that third goalkeeper, and you can potentially work your way up, even as Dane Sinclair did, right? From third to second. That's always in the cards. So for me, like I just don't think, like I just think he's had the worst luck ever in Montreal. Yeah.
It's unfortunate because he does love the club and the fan. He is a fan favorite. He's a homegrown player, and sometimes if it's not meant to be, it's not meant to be. Which is how it goes.
Agree. We have one final question on the Montreal topic, and that's from Pierre Paquette. Pierre asks, what do we think about Kyoto's future with Montreal? I don't think it's... Oh, and then kind of tying in, we also have Tate, who has just come in with any updates on Romel Kyoto. For me, I struggle to imagine him playing another game in a Montreal uniform.
Yeah, I mean, we kind of did... this was a question, was it last week or 2 weeks ago, about... will we see Romel Kyoto play in a Montreal uniform again? And if he does, a handful at best, right? If they make the playoffs, maybe he can sneak in. But I don't think he'll extend his contract again after this. His contract is up at the end of the season, and I think that Romel Kyoto's time as successful and as up and down as it's been, I think it'll come to an end at the end of the year. And I think maybe, if he gets like 2 or 3 more games in, then
so I'm very happy to be joined.
So sorry.
But yeah, I mean that's pretty much it, right? I think that's kind of the end of the road for Romel Kyoto Montreal, and it's been a great road, but it's at some point.
Yeah, I agree with you. Yeah, I mean, we'll obviously keep an eye on it. I know you're regularly training Elias, so if we start seeing any familiar faces returning, I'm sure you will be letting all of the Twitterverse know.
Yeah, that'll be news. He's not even in Montreal yet, though. But
no, exactly.
Even when he does come back,
yep,
it'll definitely be news
for sure. So yeah, with that being said, let's roll on over to we have an interview with Mason Toye of obviously Montreal fame. So once we finish playing this interview that we recorded a little while ago this week, we'll come back and we'll talk about the Women's World Cup. All right. Try and get it done.
Montreal striker Mason Toye. Hey Mason, how are you today?
Doing very well. How about yourself?
We're fine. Thanks a lot for being here on The Ball is Around Montreal. We're very, very excited to have you here. So as usual, we have a few questions for you. Some questions that, of course, are prepared. Some are fun. The others are a bit less fun. So hopefully you'll be able to answer all of them for sure. Let's start with the obvious. What or who made you love and choose soccer over anything else?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. I mean, first and foremost, all credit goes to my dad, honestly, because he played football in college and got a ton of injuries and all that type of stuff. So I really wanted to play like football, and he didn't let my brother and I play football or had a choice to play football until we were 13, and by then we had already fallen in love with our respective sports. So I'll give it to my dad, because who knows, if I was playing football instead of soccer, maybe I wouldn't be playing right now. So credit kind of goes to him, and then pros probably, obviously Thierry Henry and Eddie Johnson as well. They were two big influences on me.
So obviously you just mentioned two huge influences. Growing up, did you have a particular role model as a player or a favorite team?
Yeah, no, it was definitely Henry and Adebayor, when that kind of like Arsenal team. They're really fun to watch.
Yeah.
And I was like in my development stages. I was probably like 9 through 11 around that time. So yeah, I love watching them play.
Oh wow, that must have been very good in the dressing room with Alistair Johnston last year, being a Manchester United fan, right?
Yeah.
How was it?
No, it was okay. I mean, honestly, like as I've gotten older, the allegiance to teams has really lessened to where I'm just like, I'm one of those guys where I don't want to like have my day be ruined if my team loses. So it's more, I just watch games to kind of study them and try to take things from different players. And so I can enjoy it a little bit more, because like I love watching Harry Kane. And if I'm an Arsenal fan, I have to hate him. So it just helps to now I can enjoy watching who I want to watch,
I could respect that, as long as you don't play for Toronto. I'm okay with that. Now, this year, the team's style of play has changed a lot compared to last year. How have you adapted to Hernan Losada's style of play?
I think it's been a process. It's been a process for everybody. It's been a process for myself. The beginning of the season, I was off and on, kind of had minor injuries in preseason, so he didn't really get a great chance to figure out what type of player I was. And then obviously I had the knee injury. So once I got fully healthy, he was able to see me in training day in and day out, and I was able to kind of figure out exactly what he wanted from me and from the guys around me. So it's been a process, but I think we're slowly starting to figure it out now. You've seen by some of the results.
And like you mentioned, your injuries that you experienced this season, you've also had some injuries in your past couple of seasons, really, with Montreal, unfortunately. How have you managed to stay motivated during those off times and recovery periods?
It's not too difficult, honestly. It's a double-edged sword in a way, because when you get injured so often, you understand how to handle the injuries and how to go approach a rehab. So thankfully, the knee surgery this year, that recovery wasn't very long compared to my shoulder and my adductor. So it was kind of like a cakewalk for me. And I was like, oh, this is only a month and a half, maybe. This is gonna be pretty easy. So You just kind of try to take it step by step. Everybody talks about taking it day by day, but truly that's what it is. You just got to attack the day and try to win that day. And you see, after a week, after 2 weeks, you see the progress that you made, and that makes it a little bit easier.
Right on. And, it can be difficult to build momentum with regular injuries coming up. So what have you done differently this time around to avoid continuing kind of the cycle of injury setbacks?
Not much, honestly. I think, and again, people talk about guys are injury prone, some guys aren't, and you gotta just look at it. Everyone's life trajectory in general is very different. And some people get unlucky with things, and other people get, and again, I put air quotes around unlucky too, because the things that I've learned from all these rehabs are gonna allow me to approach adversity a lot better than if when I'm done with my career, than if my career went super smooth and I never had any road bumps, I never got injured. So that's been really nice as well. The outlook on adversity and injuries for myself, and then being able to pass that down to other guys on the team when they get injured, just understanding that's a part of life. And some guys will go through their career without getting injured once, and other guys like myself, I've gotten a bit unlucky with it. So everybody's career is different. And I haven't really done anything differently, honestly. Just trying to do my best and, pray that I don't get injured again. But, it is what it is.
Now, you scored 2 goals so far this season, both against Minnesota United, your former team. How was it to score against them? We realized that you didn't want to celebrate the goals, but how is it, like, you're a bit torn inside when you do that? Or
no, I mean, I was like every year, it's been 3 years now. I've been away from Minnesota now, so every year I was like, hopefully we play them this year. You look at the schedule, you don't play them, and I was hoping that we're playing them in Minnesota, so I'll be able to see people, be back in the old stadium and things like that. But when I saw them on the schedule this year, I was just like, I was like, hopefully I'm healthy for this game, and I was able to be. And then when that came up, it was just awesome seeing familiar faces, and obviously you want to put in a good performance. And I think that was like my first start after injury as well. So I just wanted to play a good game, and I was able to get 2 goals, and it was just funny talking to them afterwards. I was like, yeah, of course you score against us. So, yeah, that's pretty funny.
Yeah. So you were only 20 years old when you came over to Montreal. So what advice could you give to any young players who are coming into the squad around the same age that you did?
Yeah, I think like many people talk about is patience, and having compassion towards yourself, which is difficult, because I think a lot of guys at a young age are pretty hard on themselves. You try to be your biggest critic, and you're trying to break through, especially now, the way that football is going. There's so many young players, you look at guys are 17, 18, and they're making their breakthroughs. And, you look at, Ismail last year at 20, he made a breakthrough. Now he's over in England. So you just got to understand that, again, like I said before, with the injuries, it's the same thing with when you kind of hit the ground running with your career, and timing with that. So I would just say just patience with yourself, self-compassion, and just hard work. And you put all those together, and just understanding that your time will come. You look at a guy like Joe, Siwa this year. You look at him last year. I talked to him in preseason. He was like, "Yeah, I gotta go on loan," and he was a bit torn between it, but he was like, "Yeah, I know I'm gonna get my opportunity at some point. I just gotta stay patient." And this year again, he was the number 2, and he stayed patient. And look at where he is now. So it's all about timing and understanding that.
Now, of course, right now with CF Montreal, there's a lot of forwards at the club who all bring different things to the field. Even, Zachary Bogia played up front in the last game. What do you have in your own skill set, and what are you working on that makes you really stand out?
Yeah, like you said, we're all very, very different. The thing that I've been working on, that I've been a lot better at, that maybe hindered me at times, was just my hold up play. When I'm not scoring goals, and obviously as of late, I have been able to put the ball in the back of the net, but I feel like I've been pretty good in possession. and trying to help out defensively, being decent, pressing. So again, as a striker, your main job is to score, but you also need to be doing other things besides putting the ball in the back of the net. It's great to be able to score, but you can't score every game, right? So trying to be good in possession, good with pressing, trying to bring guys in and just hold the ball up. So that's been good for me. But what separates me, honestly, I don't know. That's a good question. I think you'd have to ask Hernan that on different guys' attributes and skill sets. But we have great strikers this year, and anybody who's up there, I believe in them. And you look at Chino and Mahala last game; they're unbelievable for us and create a lot of chances. And I'm just stoked for them. So we have a good relationship with all of the forwards, so which is really nice.
How did you do to really progress in holding up the ball and playing and progressing exactly the way that you described?
Mm-hmm. No, yeah, it's been this is my 6th season now, so that's been the one thing that's been kind of like the red flag when people talk about me as a player is that I can't really hold the ball up. I wasn't very strong, so it's just been getting in the weight room, getting a little bit stronger, and then just self-belief as well. Because when you come in as a young guy and they're like, you're not very good at it, so don't do it. You kind of second guess yourself. And now that I'm a bit more mature and I understand that you just kind of have to play what the game gives you. You have to just believe that you can do it. And I know that I'm a good player and I have the skill set to do it. You just kind of have to believe and put yourself in those scenarios and don't shy away from them. And I've just put myself in the positions that I need to hold the ball up and just believed in that. And it's been working pretty well so far.
The fact that you have so many different kinds of strikers, do you learn from each other? You look at the way we see with Chinonzo 4 that's really good at holding up the ball. Like, do you, even if he's younger than you and less experienced than you, of course, like, do you learn from each other by just looking at each other and the way you guys work?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you have to also look at it too, right? Chino's a massive person.
Yeah, I
so
know.
Yeah. So I wish that I could learn from that and just take some of that height and weight and everything like that. But no, yeah, I definitely try to take what I can from all the guys, all the strikers. And I know they do the same thing. So there's definitely some things that I've seen from Suni, that I've seen from Chino, that I've tried to slowly but surely kind of implement into my game. Chino does a really good job. Sometimes he doesn't flip the ball and he takes it down his chest out of the air. So little things like that, I try to kind of plug and implement slowly but surely, and it starts in training and then it comes to the game. So yeah.
Interesting. Now you've been in Montreal for now 3 years, just about. How have you adapted to living in the city, and what do you love about Montreal, our own city?
No, it's definitely, the first couple of years were, the 2021, we were in Miami for like 3.5 months or something like that. So then that was like 2021 was half the year, and then last year was my first full year. So I've finally gotten to experience like a full winter, and then coming from spring to summer until last year. So yeah, it hasn't been that difficult with the weather because I was in Minnesota before, so it's the exact same with long winter and then kind of a iffy spring, and then you get a really nice summer and everybody's super environment. So that adjustment's been not too difficult. Language I thought was gonna be a bigger thing, but it's not that bad. Just the food and just a different activity that you can do during the summer I really love. So I've definitely fallen in love with the city for sure.
Glad to hear it. It is a beautiful city for sure. I moved here as well. I chose it myself. So yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. Nice. So looking back kind of at playing, obviously, who do you think is the toughest defender that you've ever played against?
Ooh, that's a good question. Toughest defender I've ever played against. Wow, that's a good question. Probably Kendall Watson from Costa Rica. Okay. He played for Vancouver. Yeah. So yeah, he ruined my first start as a professional. I was 19 and young and skinny, and I was used to getting away with throwing elbows in college. And he's 6'4". I'm like 6'1", and he was holding me in the box, and I threw an elbow, and VAR just had it right there. So I was out. Yeah, like I think it was 61st minute. I was out with the red card my first start. So he was really difficult to go against. We went against Vancouver a couple of times in the West. So probably him or Walker Zimmerman. Those two are definitely two of the hardest defenders I've had to go against.
Yeah, incredibly.
Yeah.
So you were drafted 7th overall by Minnesota when you were selected, and there's roughly, about a 1 in 3 chance that a player who gets drafted is going to end up being signed by the team or a team in MLS. So what advice would you give to players who are looking at going through the draft process, wanting to secure a spot in MLS?
Yeah, I mean, my personal journey with that was a little bit different because I came out early after my freshman year, so I'd already signed with the league. But I've had so many teammates now that have had to go through the process of they don't know if they're going to get signed until like 3/4 of the way through preseason. So they're just kind of stressing, like they don't know. They're talking to coaches, talking to the agent. But again, I would just say adaptability and hard work and just like going above and beyond with super little things. Like those are the 3 things that I've seen that have given guys opportunities to sign contracts. You look at a guy like a name Hassani Dotson in Minnesota. He had to play. He was like a winger and a number 8 in college, and he was playing outside back the entire preseason. And he was just like, listen, like this is what I have to do. I'm going to tackle hard. I'm going to run around. I'm going to be a nuisance, and that allowed him to secure a contract. And then people got injured, and he was playing left back and right back pretty much his whole rookie year. And a couple of years later, now he's consistently starting at the number 8 for Minnesota, and is signed another decent contract and played for the under-23 national team and got a look with the senior national team. So again, that just all comes from adaptability, hard work, and just understanding that your time will come, but again, patience is big. But so that's a massive person to look at if you want to enter the draft. Hassani Dotson, that story is somebody you want to look at for sure.
You talked about Hassani Dotson, and I just want to ask you a bit, as a player in MLS, how important is networking, keeping contact with your former teammates, your former coaches, not only in MLS, but also, in college or anything? Does it have some sort of importance to stay in contact with everybody?
I don't know about like having to stay in contact with everybody, but I definitely think treating people well, treating people with respect, and that goes for anything in life, because you never know when things come back around. And that was one thing that was big for me when I left Minnesota. The coach Adrian, he just told me, he said, listen, you're young, and I know, at the time it was a bit frustrating. I wanted a change and everything like that. But he was like, listen, you never know. In football, it's a very, very small world. So you don't want to burn any bridges with anybody. You want to try to have a good rapport with everybody, treat everybody with respect and humility. And I don't know if the keeping contact with people is big, but again, like I said, treating people with respect, because you never know coaching opportunities. You back end of your career, you're just trying to sign another contract. It could be a former teammate of yours that's not a coach,
exactly.
And they want to bring you in at the end of your career or give you opportunity to coach. So I definitely think just treating people well is the best thing that you can do in any facet of life.
I had a follow-up question on that, because I thought you would help out Olivier Renard into convincing some players to come and play for us. But now
that's out of my head.
Now, Mason, of course, thanks a lot again for everything, all your answers. I do have one last question or questions. It's going to be a quick fire, so I'll ask you just a couple of. I'll give you a couple of choices. You'll choose one. So let's start with the first one: backheel goal or bicycle?
Bicycle for sure. Yeah.
Messi or Ronaldo?
Messi, so he doesn't torch us when we play him.
PlayStation or Xbox?
Xbox.
Game of Thrones or Vikings?
The Vikings is the only one that I started, so I'm just gonna say that because that's the only one. I didn't start Game of Thrones, so
Cooking or eating out?
cooking.
Cooking. Okay, perfect. Quebec or France?
Quebec
Okay.
for sure. Yeah,
Have you been to
answer.
France?
Good
I
answer.
have. I was
Oh,
very
okay.
young. Very young.
Oh, okay.
Perfect. So, and just to finish it off, how about your French? Are you trying to learn or not really?
A little bit. I really just know just the things that can get me by in a quick passing encounter. A little throw a little stuff. I can say, sorry, désolé, all that type of stuff. My left and my right. I got all that, but conversationally, very, very minimal. But it's coming. At some point, it's gonna come.
Yeah, for sure.
Perfect. Mason, Toye, thanks a lot for being here and giving us your time. It was really, really interesting. We loved having you here on The Ball is Round.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. Take care. There we go. So yeah, that was a nice little chat with one of Montreal's strikers.
Yeah, love Mason Toye. He's always just the best interview. It's great.
Yeah, he's very well spoken for sure. And definitely I think offered kind of a lot of insight into the guy behind the players. So yeah, no, it was a nice chat to have for sure. And of course, really grateful that we were able to get that time with him. So let's turn our attention now to the women's national team as they started their journey to not to the Women's World Cup, but at the Women's World Cup, hopefully to lift the Women's World Cup. Thank you for the kind words, Robbie, for the interview. Appreciate that. So Canada played their first match in Group B on Thursday night for us. So we will say they played it on Thursday night. They faced off against Nigeria. Earlier in the day, Australia had beaten the Republic of Ireland in the other Group B match with a very narrow scoreline of 1-0. Let's take a look at how Canada lined up in this match. So Bev Priestman gave us a lineup of Christine Sinclair as the captain, Kaylin Sheridan as the goalkeeper. We had a 4-player back line with Kadisha Buchanan and Vanessa Gilles in the center. We had Ashley Lawrence on the left flank and Jade Riviere on the right. Quinn playing in defensive midfield, of course. And Julia Grosso also kind of playing more of a libero role. Unfortunately, no Jessie Fleming. However, we also saw Adriana Leon and Jordan Heitema rounding out the squad with with Deanne Rose making her return to the Canadian national team for the first time in quite a while following her injury. What did you make of that lineup?
I was both surprised. There were some surprises. I'd hoped to see someone bring a bit of an energizer, someone like Lacasse in the starting lineup, and talk about her later and about her impact. But for the most part, I wasn't too surprised because again, every single player in that starting 11 has a reason, right? There was no like, why is she in there? I mean, that's a surprise. I think everyone there has been in good form and has had positive games both with the national team and with their clubs in recent weeks, months. So I think that I wasn't too surprised, and there was nobody that really made me scratch my head. But again, hindsight is 2020 when you look at that 11.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree with you. I was a little bit surprised to see Deanne Rose making a start. She did definitely get a good few minutes in with Reading as she returned from injury towards the back end of the season. But, she hasn't played with the national team now since 2022. And, that's a long time to be away. We saw a lot of other players, I think, perhaps forming some interesting partnerships up top or some interesting really tandem roles, if you will. So yeah, I was a little bit surprised to see that. That was probably the biggest surprise for me as well. Jade Riviere, she also had a long return from an injury suffered kind of in the back half of 2022, and unfortunately she only played like 5 minutes with Manchester United. So she did make her debut, but like competition-wise, she hasn't necessarily gotten a lot of minutes in her boots. So I was a little bit concerned, but I will say that I love Jade Revera's match. So there's that. So good for her for kind of shutting me up and making me not worry. So I guess spoiler alert for anybody who didn't catch the match. This one did end in a 0-0 draw. It wasn't the most eventful match in the history of time, but obviously there are a few moments for us to revisit. Most notably in the start of the second half, when Canada had the opportunity to go ahead from a penalty, and none other than the GOAT herself, Christine Sinclair, stepped up to take the penalty. However, it was a pretty tame effort that was in fact saved by the Nigerian captain, Nadozie. When I saw this, I could have like ripped the hair out of my head, I think. And obviously, you know, there's a part of me that was thrown back to Qatar with the men's national team missing a penalty in their first match as well. And I was like, what is happening here? Oh my God, will we ever score a penalty again? And kind of felt grim. But, you know, looking at even the first 45 minutes of the match, really Canada had not put very much together offensively. Nigeria were definitely very compact, and I think they were very, very hard for Canada to break down while being dangerous on the counter. But for me, I was kind of very concerned by the lack of offensive punch shown by at least the starting 11. What do you think, Elias? I just gave you a lot to talk about, so sorry.
Yeah, no, but I mean, it's all super important. It's kind of like what we talked about last week when we previewed Canada's path through this group, and one of the biggest things that we talked about is, can Canada find this attacking identity, right?
Mm-hmm.
And can they figure out how they attack? Because there's a lot of different attackers that bring quality, but in different ways.
Very much so.
So are you really going to look for individual quality to create space, or you're going to look for combination, you're going to look to attack with pace, or you're going to look to, you know, use size and strength to find crosses in the box, and it still feels like they don't know what their go-to is. You know, they're trying as many different combinations as possible, and it doesn't hit yet.
Yeah.
So I hope that, you know, they take this game against Ireland and use it again to kind of really pick one approach, because again, against Nigeria, there was, yes, they had the ball for the majority of the game, but Nigeria gave them, you know, certain things to work with. If you sit in a very organized low block, you know, Canada now has a lot of the ball in more or less advanced spots in the field. So you have to kind of tailor your game. You have to find, okay, where are our matchups? Where do we find those little gaps and stuff like that? And it just felt like Canada was too complacent and goes like, okay, fine, we're going to try this. And it didn't work. And they were like, well, we're going to try it again. And it did get frustrating for the entire first half. It did feel like, you know, that expression where like trying the same thing over and over again with the same result is the definition of insanity. And it felt like I was going insane. And so at the same time, I think that for all the frustration of a 0-0 draw, I do think Beth Priestman did get a lot of data and a lot of information, and I do hope that, you know, she shows that she's learned from this first game and adjusts accordingly, because that first half is not an indication of any team that's going to be competitive at all. You know, even if they manage to get out of the group stage, it's not a team that's going to go very far.
No, exactly. And, you know, I mean, this was Canada's sixth match that they had played, like including the She Believes Cup and in their friendlies earlier in the year. And across those 6 matches, Canada's only scored 3 goals. That's not many goals, you know. And undoubtedly, you know, they had some tough competition. Obviously, they played like the United States and France, and well, they did score against Japan, they did score against Brazil and then not against Japan. So it's not as though they've necessarily played like walk in the park opposition. However, like only scoring 3 goals across 6 matches is kind of underwhelming, to say the least, when you are the number 7 FIFA ranked nation in soccer. So I totally agree with you. I think Bev Priestman has hopefully learned a lot from this about what she can take away to make adjustments so that the team is more threatening going forward. I do think that, you know, we often, I've said it 100 million times about John Herdman. You know, he has his guys. I also think Bev Priestman definitely has people or players who she prefers to start, not necessarily based on, you know, the form that they're in. And obviously there are things that we don't see in training that could obviously factor into that. But when you think of, say, a player like Adriana Leon, who hasn't gotten a ton of minutes, even since going on loan to Portland, or obviously, as I mentioned earlier, Deanne Rose, who hasn't just been in the national team setup because she's been injured for quite a long while, where you do have players like Chloé Lacasse, who absolutely lit up Portugal last season. You have Evelyn Vian, who's been in excellent form in Sweden as well. You know, part of me wonders if you do need to go with the hot foot, especially when you're in a tournament, so you can't necessarily like wait for a player to get confident and feel great about their chances and be willing to take those risks. What do you think, Elias?
Yeah, especially against teams that you know you're going to have the lion's share of possession and you're going to have multiple opportunities to attack. So it's not like a game where it's going to be 50-50. You're going to have to defend a lot of the game and you have to make your chances count. You will get multiple opportunities. So I think you do have to go with the people that are feeling themselves the most. You have to go with people that are in form. It's a best on best tournament with, like you said, right? It's not 30 games now. It's not 40 games a whole season. You have to, you need results now. And I do think that the rest of the unit and the fact that, you know, Montreal's defense and midfield and goalkeeping is so solid will allow them to kind of navigate the more complicated games a lot better. But at the end of the day, if you don't score goals, you're not going to win any soccer games. So they have to really kind of figure it out. And I think that this game and just how good, you know, Brett Priestman's subs were off the bench at kind of turning the tide will maybe encourage her to feel a different attacking layout against Ireland. They should expect to have the ball again a lot of the time.
Exactly. I'm glad you mentioned it because I was going to.
If anything, even less of a counter-attacking threat from Ireland. So they should absolutely try and, you know, maybe put in some people with confidence, people that not only were confident going into this tournament, but then had excellent substitutes off the bench, like Chloé Lacasse or Lunvier, who can now kind of, in turn, bring that in from the start of the game. And then you could take maybe a bit your more people that are that Priestman turns to more often and have them come off the bench if you want them to be impact subs. I do think that from the start, especially given how frustrating the game against Nigeria was, you have to get a good start right away and kind of right the ship almost. Yeah.
Overall, definitely going to be a really challenging, I think, call for Bev Priestman to make come Wednesday. You know, when it is at least Wednesday morning our time, when it is time to select that squad for the Republic of Ireland, because again, they were a very resolute defense against Australia. You know, they wound up giving up the lone goal of the match to a penalty. And so that's like you said, you're going to need something a little bit. You're just going to need a little bit more spark in that offense than what we saw against Nigeria. You know, hoping definitely that all the players are healthy, because we did see Ashley Lawrence take a nasty tackle late in the match. She seemed to be okay and carried on the match.
How she walked away from that, I don't know, because it still makes me cringe seeing her ankle bend like that. I don't.
I can't believe it required VAR. It was.
Yeah, that too. But just, I got to see that at like 45 different angles of slow motion and just. Not feel too great.
No, it was brutal, but it looks like overall she should be okay. I haven't heard anything regarding her being injured, because for me she was one of the best players out on the pitch for Canada that night. She was phenomenal. She was most anything good that Canada was doing in the attacking section of play. It did come from her, making so many runs up the pitch, making crosses into the box, and definitely as well. I think defensively, she was able to keep pace with the Nigerian players when they did break on the counter. So for me, she's clutch and she's critical. And she also made a huge clearance in the first match when Kaylin Sheridan kind of got caught a little bit unawares with a Nigerian counter attack. So I really, 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 really hope that she is fit to start for sure. So that being said, any specific names that you would like to see on the starting 11 for the match against the Republic of Ireland?
Chloe Lacasse. It's the
Toye
first name on the
Lacasse?
team sheet. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's a reason why everyone was like, since she's starting, when she it took 5 minutes of substitute action for everyone to realize that like she needs these minutes, especially if your offense stalls. This is someone that can make something out of nothing. This is someone that brings so much energy and so much technical quality. And again, based on just like her performances in Portugal, all the confidence in the world, and she's arguably the most informed player on that team. So I think that having her in the starting 11 is a no-brainer, especially when you're expecting a very similar defensive opponent against Ireland.
Yeah, agree. I think certainly, obviously, it probably goes without saying, but if Jessie Fleming is fit, she absolutely needs to start because her creativity is second to none on this team. And I think that was a piece that was so sorely lacking for Canada in this first match. They needed that maestro. They need that vision that she brings that is so unique to this team. So so for me, I'm going to cross my fingers, cross my toes, cross my eyes, whatever it takes that she is fit to, even just to make it, I think would be a great boon to this squad. But if she can start, all the better. So obviously, we will certainly talk more about the women's national team and their forthcoming matches, or at least their second match on our next episode. Hopefully we'll have some goals to break down. Fingers crossed.
Yes, or at least a more entertaining game altogether.
Exactly.
But yeah, I mean, credit to Nigeria again for playing the game exactly the way they wanted to. That could not have gone better for them. I mean, besides the red card, that could not have gone better for them. Yeah. So again, credit to them for putting up a very, very impressive and stifling performance.
Yep. No, I completely agree. We do have a question. We have a question from Mathieu, who asks, which teams have impressed you the most so far at the Women's World Cup tournament? So far seems competitive enough. I totally agree, Mathieu. We haven't seen any of those blowout scores with like a double-digit goal difference.
Thank God.
Which, yeah, exactly. I mean, it's still early in the tournament, but you know, like the biggest margin I think has been 5-0, which is still, you know, yeah, exactly. And I think probably the team that is turning the most heads right now is Jamaica, given that they held France to a 0-0 draw, which is very, very remarkable for a CONCACAF nation that's up and coming, you know, in the world of women's football. So they're probably the first ones that come to my mind. What about you?
New Zealand. You know, they were, it was, again, I didn't get to watch the entire game, but it was definitely one of those performances where the crowd, it shows the advantage of a home crowd that they're going to carry throughout the majority of this tournament. And it really did open my eyes to the fact that, you know, them and Australia have an incredible advantage going into basically every game this tournament, right? Because it's a 15-minute flight or a half-hour boat ride right between the two countries. If ever one plays on the other, I don't know if maybe when you get to the elimination round, should they make it, that'll be the case. But they have, you know, at the very least, you know, 50, 60,000 people supporting them at every single game. And it's going to be an incredible experience. And just the energy that they brought to that opening game was so palpable. And I mean, obviously Japan winning 5-0, that's obviously it's the biggest scoreline of the tournament. It's going to catch everybody's attention. You know, Japan have always been giants of women's soccer, and they're going to continue that. And I think that they're you know, one of the front runners to kind of end this American dominance. So yeah, those are the two teams that really did stick out to me.
I wanted to mention, so sorry, I forgot about Hady. Hady did lose the opening match. Yes, and obviously, I mean, for Hady, this is a pretty monumental occasion for them to be at this World Cup.
Absolutely.
Once again, another CONCACAF representative, and they lost 1-0 to England. But to me, losing 1-0 to England is absolutely nothing to sneeze at. Yeah. I mean, if Canada lost 1-0 to England, I would be like, oh, that happened. I wouldn't be like the least bit salty about it, really. Well, I'd be a little salty, of course, but I wouldn't be terribly salty. And once again, they also only conceded their only goal on a penalty. So kind of that's just how it's going to be sometimes. So for Hady, I mean, it didn't look like a terribly competitive match. They obviously England was kind of throwing the kitchen sink at the Haitian team. They had 10 shots on target. Vast majority of the possession, like 2/3 of the possession, basically. So definitely, it was kind of Hady battening down the hatches and clinging on for dear life a little bit and trying to play on the counter, similar to what we often see in tournaments like this. But I mean, to stand up to that, I mean, huge credit to their goalkeeper for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and it's definitely been it's been a lot more interesting tournament than the past couple of editions. So I'm looking forward to seeing what else they bring.
Yeah, just the more parity, the better. And
100% agree.
I think there's no clear-cut favorite now, and there's no team that's going to be, hopefully no team that's going to be the proverbial punching bag. At least too much. Again, Zambia did have a rough first game, but hopefully no team that's going to have like a -20 goal differential or something with 0 goals scored and 0 wins. That's never fun.
No, exactly.
Yeah.
No. So, definitely worth keeping an eye on all the groups this tournament around, because we've already seen a few near upsets and a few kind of really heartening performances from some debutante teams. All right, so let's turn our attention now to social media.
Social media, yes. The world of the Twitter.
All yours.
Yes, this is from Robert Zalischuk. I hope I pronounced that right. I'm sorry, but the elephant in the room is that Lacasse and Vien should have been starting months ago. Leaving Larissi off the roster was a huge blunder. Bev put her eggs in the wrong basket. And it goes on to list, just all the attackers, where Leon, Lacasse, Larissi, Vien, Haidama, Becky, Sinclair, and Yunat Grosso. We kind of touched on this before talking about the Nigeria game, but if you had a starting, depending on how they line up, right, 2 strikers and a 10 wingers, how would you line up the Canadian attack for Ireland?
I would give, me, I am the co-conductor maybe with Hady of the Evelyn Vien hype train. So I would give my left arm to see her start. I truly would. I think you're definitely right. Chloe Lacasse brought a ton of like pugnaciousness to the
It's a good word.
But it fits to the
word.
attack when she subbed in. So I completely agree that she should have her place. For me, Adrian Leon, and again, I understand Dion Rose is coming back into this squad a little bit, but for me, they didn't really do it for me. Like, I'm sorry. In the time that they played out there. So I would love to see that. I think Nichelle Prince could also have some very interesting things to say about, obviously, if she were to get more of a look in, but she's also working her way back from an injury, so that could be tricky to navigate. And she might not be ready for a start yet. But yeah, for me, I think Bev Priestman has to take a look and give more minutes to Vien and Lacasse for sure.
The idea of Christine Sinclair being a super sub instead of a starter was floated around a number of times. What do you think about that as a potential alternative?
I mean, there are matches that she hasn't started. It's not like it's a crime, for her to not start a match, especially, these matches are coming in relatively quick succession. Although like, it is almost a week's difference between the first and second match in this case for Canada, just the way the schedule worked out. But, it could be a long tournament, and you do have to manage fitness and navigate that. There's nothing wrong with your role changing, particularly as you enter kind of that next phase of your career. I mean, we've already seen her role change from going as the striker to playing a lot deeper in the midfield. So honestly, for me, it's what's most important is to get a result. If Christine Sinclair as a starter is going to get you that, is more likely to get you that result, then start her. But like, you can't just start somebody just because they're the GOAT. There needs to be a sporting justification to it.
Yeah, I agree.
And believe me, I have so much respect for Christine Sinclair. I do not mean that disrespectfully, I promise. Alrighty,
one of the greatest ever, right? Yeah, for sure.
The greatest.
Yes, this is from Mike Ng. I need the Canadian women's national team fan base to see this tweet because France played to a draw against Jamaica, so don't overreact to our draw against Nigeria.
Yep.
This is in response to a ESPN FC tweet about the draw. Is it a bit of a not a relief, but is it kind of almost a relief seeing all these teams that are contenders either struggling or drawing teams that they should be not necessarily walking over, but beating comfortably? Or are you still concerned about Canada?
I'm definitely concerned about Canada's lack of goals, 100%. But also, we kind of talked about it, other nations are coming along. And let's face it, kind of those top 5, top 10 nations in FIFA kind of almost took it for granted. Like, I don't want to say like the teams took it for granted, but I think those of us who watched them certainly almost took it for granted for many years. Like, okay, well, we see this, and this team in our group. We already know, like, they don't have a ton of experience at the World Cup. Like, look at where their players play, so on and so forth. But lo and behold, more players are, there are more women's domestic leagues now than there were, in previous editions of the World Cup. There are more players playing at the highest levels from a wider range. I think scouting is also improving in the women's game. And so, by extension, there's more investment into women's national setups as well. So other nations are improving. And like we said earlier, that is only better for the game. Absolutely. So for me, I think it's just almost like a wake-up call for those of us who watched.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and hopefully there's more wake-up calls. I'd love me an upset, except if it's against Canada. But other than that, bring on the upsets.
Okay, yeah. I'm with you, team upset. Except Canada. Next tweet. Except
Canada, of course. Yes, this is from this is in response to a tweet from Bibian Media saying that top 3 players of the match, Chouanière, Duke, and Saliba. And it's a tweet from Megan saying, justice for Corbo. Throughout the season, he's kind of been the quiet, consistent player.
The unsung hero.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Just how important is Gabriela Corbo to this group, especially in the fact that he doesn't always have his praises sung throughout his second stint with CF Montreal, if you will.
Yeah, I still think probably Rudy Camacho right now is more important to that defense overall in the big scheme of things, but he absolutely has his place. And, he's been asked to play out of position on the out-ish, I guess, of position on the left-hand side of that defense. And he's doing a phenomenal job filling
even
in.
At right back,
Yes, or even at right back. And I mean, he definitely survived that as well. So yeah, no, I mean, let's face it, it's not the most glorious position in the world unless you make a highlight reel of the week tackle. You're probably going to get a little bit overlooked for some other players. It's just kind of how it is. But no, I mean, to be quietly excellent, especially in a position where when you make a mistake, it's usually pretty darn costly. To be quietly excellent is kind of nothing to be ashamed of.
Absolutely. He was great when he was with Montreal last year, and I was genuinely sad to see him go. And he came back at a really tough time for the club, and he did exactly what was asked from him. And he was, again, you have Joel Waterman, who played for the national team. You have Rudy Camacho, who's the star, if you will, of the defense, but he has been the third musketeer and has done that job very admirably.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree. All right, next up.
The next tweet is from Tactical Manager. before Messi's arrival, every single MLS fan knew how bad Inter Miami was. Now the world knows. Did you? I want your maybe your take on just how bad Miami was before Messi got on, before Busquets got on, before Martinez got on. They kind of started to take over
when
the
you're
game.
last, like nobody really winds up in last place by accident.
Yeah, because I hadn't seen a Miami game in a while, and at least a few weeks I hadn't seen a Miami game, and I watched it, and I almost forgot just how sloppy it was. And they could have been down like 3 or 4-0 inside the first 10 minutes.
Yeah.
So it was almost a reminder that yes, Messi is coming into this team and all, and Busquets and maybe Jordi Alba, and they're assembling the Avengers, but this team has so much work to do.
Yeah.
What do you think is a reasonable result for them? Should they get, like, maybe Jordi Alba is pretty much a done deal? Just those 3 coming in, what would be an acceptable return on that this season at least? Because next season,
this season, I mean, they're kind of far in the hole, you know. Like if I'm talking about MLS, right? I'm not talking about Leagues Cup. I'm still struggling with that. They're pretty far in the hole. Like when you're looking at, say, the playoff picture. Obviously, you know, things have extended to, say, 9th place. You know, has that play-in opportunity, but they're even 12 points out of that, and you know they do have a couple of games in hand on most of the teams above them. It just feels like a tall ask. It really does. It feels like a big order. I would say sneaking into one of those play-in playoff places. That's my thought. I can't hear you, Elias. Oh, wait, no, I can hear you now.
I think at least. Okay.
I can hear you.
I think at least being in the running for that, putting strings some together and being at the very least considered a threat for playoffs is, I think, the best that they can do. So yeah, we're kind of in the same boat on that.
Yeah, exactly. And let's face it, given where they are at, it's a relatively solid return on investment because basically pulling them back from the dead.
Next year they got to win the double though, or else it's a disappointment.
That's a lot of money.
A lot of money.
Yeah.
It is all
money.
Right.
Indeed. Last tweet. This tweet comes from Brian Ash. Nights like tonight remind everyone that Montreal, c'est une ville de football, heated, passionate, tense, and complete with a classic CONCACAF ref. Ambiance incroyable au Stade Saputo. Do you think that they can use games like this, especially Leagues Cup, against Mexican teams? And should they qualify and then play another Mexican team maybe in the round of 32? Do you think that they can translate this into a more consistent atmosphere in MLS? Because, again, attendance has been up compared to last year, which is impressive given how good Montreal was last year and how they haven't been as good this year. But do you think that that's a way to kind of bring more people to the stadium in a sustainable way, or is it really just going to be for these special events like was in the question? I mean, I think maybe like your general casual fan might come back for a few more matches. Like I don't necessarily know if anybody's going to suddenly convert to a season ticket, you know, from 0 to that. But you know, I could certainly see some casual fans, maybe, you know, doing like a couple of 3 or 4 games a season, whereas it might have been their first time, because it is a really excellent ambiance. It's really great marketing. Obviously, it was a super eventful match on top of everything. It really did have it all, kind of for a casual fan. So yeah, I think this could definitely serve as an interesting marketing trampoline.
I agree. I think it could be a great opportunity, and I hope Montreal does not miss said opportunity.
We shall see. Alrighty. So I think that does bring us to the end of our show. Yes. So thank you to everybody who watched along with us tonight, who sent us any comments or questions that you had. Oh my gosh, did we forget a question? Elias. That was dangerously close. We do have one final question on our Twitter. from none other than our former co-host, Samuel Savi. And if you give me 1 second, I will bring it up and apologize profusely. I don't think you did. So thank goodness he's here to remind us and keep us honest. All right, just give me 1 sec here. I'll get it saved, Sam. Bless your heart for your patience. I do apologize. It was not intentional. Give me 1 quick second. I'm coming for it. And actually, Sam had some interesting answers to his question as well. If anybody does want to check it out on Twitter, feel free. Just in the midst of saving in here. Sam asked us an interesting question, and I think probably like the whole point of this is maybe the two of us can answer it. So just let me add it in here. I don't know where I saved it because did I save it in the balls round? Like a smart person? I did. All right, Sam's tweet is uploading. Our final tweet of the evening, truly final, I think, I hope. Sam Savvy asks us, in which tier would you place Camacho's career so far in Montreal and why? A, club legend, B, great soldier, C, good dude, D, forgettable, or E, bum? So our former co-host has a hot question. It's elicited a lot of discussion already on Twitter, but Elias, do you want to go first? I know my answer.
Yeah, I think it's a strong B and a light A. I think it's more in the B section just because A has your
for me,
Nacho Piattis, your DJ, especially in the MLS era, you have your Nacho Piattis, you have your Baptiste Bernier, you have your DJ Drogbas, and I don't think he's there, but he's as close as anyone could be. I think him and like Roman Kyoto are neck and neck to like the next ones should, if they were to continue longer or join earlier, they would be in that discussion for A, but he's very, very comfortably in B as, you know, one of the stalwarts of this era within the MLS era. So absolutely, I have him in B.
Yeah, I would also rate him as a good soldier. Like you said, there are kind of very, very iconic players who are really the ones who I would give the title of club legend to, and, you know, magical players, I would say. And, you know, as well, it's for as good as Camacho has been, you know, over kind of say the past 3 years, there are also the first few years of his time in Montreal that like the whole time that he's been here has to factor into it, right? And I mean, he has been excellent for Montreal. Like I said earlier, he has been decisive in some important penalty shootouts for Montreal, which definitely raises his esteem for me anyway. So that's I agree, and then I just kind of have a few other reasons why I agree. So Sam, I do apologize for nearly missing you, but thank you so much for keeping us honest, and hope we answered your question to your satisfaction. All right. Pretty sure that's all we have for tonight.
I think we've cut our bases. Yeah.
I think so. Alrighty. So with that being said, thank you to everybody who watched along, who sent us questions, and who reminded us that we had questions, because we are human and occasionally may forget. Thank you as well for those of you who have listened along live, listened throughout the week, sent in any other comments that you may have. You know, do feel free to share the pod, you know, on social media of your choice as well. Our content is always going to be free. However, we do offer a Patreon should you wish to support our project. As you can see, we have a proper background finally, and definitely more interesting things coming down the line from that. So I wish you all a wonderful week, and we will see you next Sunday for another episode of The Ball is Round.